If you've been thinking about how to package what you know into an online course and even launch that from scratch, then you're going to love today's episode of the Think Media podcast. What is the opportunity right now with online courses?
The numbers don't need to be astronomical for you to make a great living. Even a small creator can make a very big impact. The best courses out there are where you are not leaving any stone unturned. You're willing to say, this is exactly how you do it step by step by step. I think people think they need the competitive edge. You don't. What you need is a 10% edge. So let's talk about that real quick. I need to be 10% ahead of those I serve. Boom, you got your course. So you got to know what you want. Do you want to pick up your kids at 3 o'clock? Do you want to work from home and never have to commute? You've got to get really clear on what you want. And it has to mean something to you. Mine was, I never want a boss for the rest of my life.
How do you find your unique angle in a world where you're like, man, there's already other people with online courses or creating content like I am? Amy Porterfield is really a legend in the space. New York Times best-selling author, prolific content creator, incredible history and reputation in the industry. And I'm super honored to have her here today talking about really the opportunity with online courses, some of the changes that we need to know, and her best tips for getting started. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm super fired up to have you on the show, and I'm curious, what is the opportunity right now with online courses?
It's a huge opportunity. You know, I want to address real fast that people will say, there's so much competition with courses. So many people have courses or teaching courses. And how do you get seen and heard in such a noisy world? And what I've noticed, I've taught thousands and thousands of students how to create digital courses. And you only need a tiny sliver of the internet to pay attention, to make a huge impact, and to be very profitable with courses. So what you need to know is that courses are alive and well. People are searching every single day to learn how to do this, how to do that, whatever it might be. And we'll talk about some topics that are really working. But even a small creator can make a very big impact when they find their audience and they go all in with that topic that they know they can teach and make an impact. So I just want to say there's room for all of us in this space. And I've seen it with so many of my students.
Has there been changes in the industry now that you've been doing it for a while that we should be aware of, and maybe some of the new rules?
Yeah. So I have been creating and teaching courses for 15 years. And so I've seen some changes. Interesting enough, though, I've also seen things like battle-tested strategies that worked 15 years ago that still work today. And I love that. I'm a girl that I like to find what works. I'm like a dog with a bone, find what works and just keep going forward with that. And I've been able to do that through my own courses and with my students. But some of the changes I've seen, number one, attention span. It has gotten shorter and shorter every single year. So what I tell my students is if you're creating a course, let's not make hour-long videos inside of a course. And that used to be 15 years ago. I bet you remember, we used to buy courses and watch for hours in the same video. Now it's 10-minute videos. If you've got an hour-long training, we're breaking those up. People need to feel like they're getting through the course really quickly. So attention span is important. Also, how you're marketing the courses. I've seen so many different ways, from challenges to boot camps to video sales letters to webinars. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And what I've seen change is now we're kind of combining. So let me give you an example. I've used webinars to sell my courses for 15 years now, and they still work really, really well. But I've had to tweak that a little bit. Now I do a boot camp for about 2 weeks leading into a webinar. We've seen a 20% conversion for people in the boot camp versus, let's say, a 10% conversion with a webinar alone. So we have started to see pairing different strategies has worked really well.
We'll kind of maybe jump to marketing, because I would love for definition for the audience of what is the difference between a webinar, a challenge, and a boot camp.
I love this question. Yes. Okay. And also let's talk webinars. A lot of my students that are new, they'll say, so should I do webinars to grow my email list? And I'll say, no, let's keep the webinars for selling. And so a webinar, the way I teach it, it's in, let's say, an hour-long webinar. And for the first 45 minutes, you are giving immense value. I have a saying, no matter if they buy or not, they walk away feeling inspired, excited, and driven to take action, no matter if they buy or not. if I say that before a live webinar and I teach my students to do the same, I'm in a place of service. And so I do a better webinar knowing it's not all about if they buy or not. And so a webinar, although is to sell, value first and then to sell. So that's a webinar. That's how I look at a webinar. And it's a great list builder. I don't use it to just grow my list, but a huge benefit is people are signing up for it. They get on the webinar. And then after the webinar, why a webinar is so valuable is the email marketing campaign that you can do. So let's say I sell 100 people on the live webinar. I can sell 300 over the next week through email marketing, whether they attended the webinar or not, just by signing up and getting their interest. So there's a whole strategy there, but webinars are very powerful. But let's talk boot camp. A boot camp is something I love to do where let's say I take 3 lessons I'm going to teach over the next week. And I do it pretty close, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday. So I go into the next week. I'm teaching something around one core topic. How to get started with a digital course might be one of my boot camps. But I'm showing up live, I'm teaching, and then I might give them an action item and we're talking about it in the group. We might have some prizes, some fun things we're doing, but I am highly engaged. And then from there though, I don't think a boot camp is enough. I will then follow up with a webinar at the end of the boot camp. We'll call it a special extra training, but essentially it's a webinar. A challenge is very similar, but a challenge, the way I look at it, is you're getting into my challenge and you're doing something every single day that you normally wouldn't do. And you're doing it online, or you're doing it with your family, or you're doing it whatever you're doing, but then you're reporting back and saying, I did it. So there's a lot of accountability and getting you out of your comfort zone. So a challenge is slightly different than a boot camp, but there's a lot of similarities. But I'd still do a webinar at the end of a challenge to sell my course.
I love that breakdown. And you already kind of touched on this idea that there's a big opportunity right now.
Yes.
Even though it feels like there's a lot of competition. But the truth is there is a lot of competition.
There is.
One of the things that you help people with is helping them find their unique angle to stand out.
Yes.
For that individual, maybe touch on the mindset piece of getting into this, but also how do you find your unique angle in a world where you're like, man, there's already other people with online courses or creating content like I am?
So the first thing is that mindset right there. There's already people doing what I want to do. If I or you had that mind, we do very things that a lot of people do. YouTube, courses, there's a lot of people teaching that kind of thing out there. If we thought that years ago, we'd never be sitting here with the success we have today. So the first mindset shift I want people to make is, who cares who's doing it? It's cliche to say, but no one does it quite like you, but it's very true. And again, I want to go back to what I said earlier. You need a tiny sliver of the internet to pay attention. So think about it. You have $1,000 course and 20 people buy it. That is a lot of money. I think you can get 20 people on the internet with over 7 billion people in this world to buy your course. So we need to be realistic about these numbers and know that even though there's Gary V's in the world that can sell hundreds of thousands, that's not necessary to make a beautiful living and have more freedom in your life. And the reason I teach how to create courses is because I believe they give you more freedom. They allow you to create a business from scratch. You become your own boss. You can call the shots. It's exactly why I got into this. So there's so many benefits, and the numbers don't need to be astronomical for you to make a great living. But to get back to your question, now I lost it. What was it?
So then how do you find your unique angle
Yes.
and stand out and maybe find that uniqueness?
Yes. So one, we're not going to focus on who else is doing it. We're going to let that go. But also, let's say, so I teach courses in so many different areas, from pet grooming to relationships to real estate to leadership. I mean, there's to how to groom your giraffe at a zoo. Yeah, there's a $63,000 course out there. Like, she's made $63,000 with teaching how to take care of your giraffe at a zoo. So there's so many different topics. The thing is, you need to ask yourself, where is my sweet spot? Where have I gotten results for myself or for others? And am I willing to teach everything I did to get those results? So you don't have to have like a unique edge to it. You don't have to say, well, I'm going to teach leadership, but I've got this really cool strategy that no one's ever taught. You just need to be willing to say, I got results for myself or someone else, and I'm willing to teach it, and break it down step by step. The best courses out there are where you are not leaving any stone unturned. You're willing to say, this is exactly how you do it step by step by step. So that's the thing. I think people think they need the competitive edge. You don't. What you need is a 10% edge. So let's talk about that real quick. A 10% edge is, I am 10% ahead of those that I want to serve, and I'm going to show them the way. You don't need more certification, more time, more training. A lot of people, when they get into my world, they think, I probably should get more certifications or learn this or go back to college or get with a coach and build this up before I do it. No. You already know enough to create a digital course. And in your mind, if you can change their mindset to say, I just need a 10% edge. I need to be 10% ahead of those I serve. Boom, you got your course.
That's brilliant. And what are some examples of students and niches? You've already mentioned some. What are the opportunities and maybe some of the unknown ones, and maybe also some of the biggest opportunities? If someone was going to use a framework for trying to make their decision of where they're going to plant their flag, how do they narrow that down to find their topic and their niche?
It's such a great question. So I want to give an example. I have 2 students that created a course around real estate, but this is what happened. They created a podcast all about real estate, how they were getting clients, what their systems and processes look like. And one day they decided to create a lead magnet that they use in their business. And it was a template that they use on a daily basis to track their clients and the people, their prospects. So they thought this would be a great lead magnet. They put it out there and their audience loved it. They're like, this is the greatest thing. Do you have more templates like that? And they thought they were in Digital Course Academy program, and they thought that could actually be our course. Because some people just struggle with, what would I even create a course about? But what they did is they practiced with something. They tried something. They put a lead magnet out there and they waited for their response. And the response was really good. So they decided, I'm going to create a course on, we're just going to put all of our templates that we use in our business, and we're going to teach people how to use the templates. That was the whole course. They are almost at $1 million mark with course sales. And it's all because they just listened to their audience. So that's the number one thing. A lot of my course creators, what I tell them is we got to be creating weekly original content to understand what our audience wants. A YouTube channel is one thing that we definitely suggest, or a podcast or a blog, so that if you're putting out your weekly content, your audience will tell you what course they want. And I think that's one of the strategies that's worked really well. So to talk real fast about different topics and courses, one of my students has a course, well, a few actually have a course on how to sleep train a baby. So they are not necessarily the expert of all experts, but one of my students, she has 3 babies, and you can relate to this. She's done really well to get those babies to sleep at night. She knows the strategies she used, the different things that they've tried. And so she created a course on that. It doesn't mean that she's the expert that everyone calls on. She just knows her way of doing it. And she started teaching it through weekly original content. And then she created a course. One more example, I have a student, her name's Kelly, and she was an attorney. And Kelly decided to create a course on, well, she worked one-on-one. This is one thing that your audience can relate to. A lot of people start out with one-on-one coaching, consulting, but we all know that you can only go so far with one-on-one. You're one person. There's only so much money you can make or so many hours in a day. So a lot of my students want to transition from one-on-one to course creation. What Kelly did was she had a really odd but effective time management strategy she created as an attorney. It worked for her. She kind of took a little of this, a little of that, and she did it for a while. Her 10% edge is she dialed in her productivity as an attorney, and she thought, I could teach this to other people. So she started one-on-one. And then what happened is there's only so much time in a day or so much money you can make. So she created a course on this very odd strategy she used, and people loved it because she had such a connection to it. It wasn't earth-shattering, mind-blowing, like that's the coolest thing ever. It just worked for her. And she found the audience that needed that kind of strategy as well. $213,000 later in a digital course, she's doing well. So I guess what I want to really hit home on, it doesn't need to be the next biggest, craziest idea that will work. You just need to be able to show people how to get results, and then find a way to talk to them so they trust you to teach them how to do it.
And that's so encouraging. And I actually want to ask you about the mindset when starting. You're at 9 figures.
Yes.
Which is just wild. Like, especially thinking about that person who's at the bottom of the mountain.
Right.
But I love that I read part of your story was that your first launch brought in $267.
Yes.
That's a long way before 9 figures.
Amen.
And so what is the mindset? I mean, you are so connected to your students and the people you serve. So you know kind of the fears and the different mindsets. It's just so overwhelming when you start thinking like, I want to do this, but there's so much, so many pieces, and who am I?
Yes.
Imposter syndrome and all these different things. Speak to that. What is the mindset when getting started in this?
So you are right. I made $267 and then I cried for an entire week and told my husband, I am not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I need to go grovel back for my job. Like, this is not going to work. So I know every insecurity and fear that comes from creating an online business. I've absolutely been there. And what happened when I made $267 is I realized, okay, I could either get back to this and figure out how to make it work, or I could go back to a life I do not want. So you got to know what you want. Do you want to pick up your kids at 3:00? Do you want to build your own business so you never have a boss again? Do you want to work from home and never have to commute? You've got to get really clear on what you want. And it has to mean something to you. It doesn't matter if anyone else thinks it's a cool idea or good idea, just you. Okay. Mine was, I never want a boss for the rest of my life. I've been working in corporate since the day I got out of college, and I just knew I was ready to be my own boss. So getting clear about what you want and making sure it means something to you is what is going to get you past your first launch that maybe won't go as planned. So $267 launch, cried for a week, thought I wasn't cut out to be an entrepreneur. But what got me back in the game is I thought, I want this life. I know I want it. And my secret is you've got to learn to love what it takes to get what you want. Layla Hermosi first said that, at least the first time I heard it. And I thought, wait a second, you got to learn to love what it takes to get what you want. And a lot of what it takes is failure. A lot of what it takes is long nights, confusion. A lot of my students get stuck with course creation because they don't know the next step to take or the next right step. All you need to do is keep taking action. Action creates clarity. So the mindset of getting into the game, creating the course, and all the doubts, all the imposter syndrome will never go away. Do you agree with that? Do you think imposter syndrome ever goes away?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm still deeply insecure.
Same, my friend. You were giving me a compliment. I'm going to admit something I don't want to admit. You said something really nice, like, you're Amy Porterfield. You are the top of your game. And in my head, I'm like, what is he saying? So I deal with it every single day. However, I'm very clear about what I want. And I know it's going to take me showing up even when I don't feel confident. So I'm just going to show up anyway. That's what it takes to create courses, memberships, group coaching. So what I learned from working for Tony Robbins forever is 80% of this is mindset. I'll teach you strategies all day long to create courses and build your email list. I've got them all. But if I can't get you to think, I am going to figure this out no matter what, my strategies don't matter. So I'm glad you asked about mindset. I think it's more important than anything.
That's so strong. And I love all of that advice. But now let's talk a little bit about the practical. If we just covered a few steps, and in the show notes, we'll look up some resources and some different things. You've got some great stuff for people to go to next steps. But now, if I am saying, yes, I'm watching this video because I want to create an online course, and I'm wanting that 1, 2, 3 of what are the first couple steps?
Yes. Okay, good. The first one is you got to figure out your sweet spot. We talked a little about this so we can go through it quickly. The sweet spot is 4 quadrants. Number 1, your 10% edge. Where have you gotten results for yourself or somebody else that you're willing to teach? That's the first one. The second quadrant is where are people spending money? So we've got to think about, are there books about the topic you want to teach? Are there podcasts about it? Are there other courses? If the answer is yes, there are, that's a really good thing. People often think, oh my gosh, I need to think of something new that no one's ever done. Don't do that. The fact that it's been done successfully is a really good thing. The third quadrant is your audience's pain point. Now, I often say pain point or desire, but I lean more toward if you know their challenge, if you know their pain points, and you can create a course to combat that is going to be hugely valuable. So we got to get clear on what your expertise is, and then also what is the pain point of your audience. Those need to marry each other. So we've got those 3 quadrants. The 4th quadrant is what will bring you joy. One time I created an entire course on how to teach Facebook marketing or actually Facebook ads. And this was many years ago. And I finished the course and it was the last thing I wanted to talk about. I had kind of outgrown it. I had already had someone running my ads. I didn't want to talk about it. Created an entire course, never saw the light of day. I really think it's important that whatever you create, you're going to eat, sleep, breathe it. You got to love it. And so those 4 quadrants are your sweet spot. That's the first step you're going to do.
Hey, we're going to continue my conversation with Amy in just a second, but I wanted to give you a heads up about a limited time opportunity to join Amy Porterfield for a deep dive free masterclass all about the 5 steps for a low stress, start to finish online course launch. You know, we surveyed the Think Media podcast community, and 7 out of 10 people want to create an online course, but they felt like they didn't know where to start, like they had started, but they're kind of stuck and the course is not out yet, or they just generally feel overwhelmed. And so if you want to finally get serious about packaging what you know into a profitable online course, then I highly recommend joining this free masterclass that Amy is hosting. If you go to digitalcourseclass.com or just click the link in the show notes, you can register for free. What I love about Amy is her expertise and mastery of this subject goes incredibly deep, and she rarely hosts free trainings like this one. So if you're thinking about packaging what you know into an online course, you want some help and you want some incredible free information, then definitely check out digitalcourseclass.com or just click the link in the show notes to register for this free training with Amy Porterfield. And with that, let's jump back into the conversation in this podcast episode.
The second step is we need an audience. One of the things that stops people in their tracks from creating a course is they'll say, but Amy, I have no one to market to. And I always say there's no silver bullet here. Whether you're going to create a course, a membership, a group coaching, mastermind, all of it requires an audience. So we've got to focus on growing our email list. You don't want to launch a course without an email list. Now, what I teach my students is let's get a list of 500 people. If you have 500 people on your email list, you can make great money with a digital course if you nurture that list. So we're not talking about hundreds of thousands. 500 people on your email list is your first goal. And how do you do that? Well, we're going to use our social media to talk about a great lead magnet, some kind of giveaway. We talk about it often. We find different ways to talk about it. We start getting people on our email list. We're not going to overcomplicate it. So that's the second thing that we need an audience. Social media and an email list is important here. And so then from there, I think it's important to remember you can outline your course, you can get all the details together, but you do not need to create it before you launch it. So a lot of what I teach is I teach people how to create a course and how to market it, but we're going to create the outline. We're going to get clear on what we want to do. ChatGPT has become a best friend of many of my course creators, helps with the outline, helps with detailing it out. You got to know what you're selling, but let's not create it before we make money, because sometimes it doesn't work. Like my $267 launch, you can go back to the drawing board, tweak some things before you spend time and money creating it. So I always say, launch the course, and then you can create it week by week and drip each module. There's nothing like putting a little fire under your feet that I made money with this course. Now I better create it. So you'll get it done once you launch it. But I always say, let's create the course after we launch it.
Man, these are some great tips. And in the second part of our conversation, I want to go deeper in email marketing. And you've given us such great advice for kind of getting started. I feel like this is almost a shift though towards more of an advanced conversation for those who maybe already have an online course, who have been doing this for a while, because one of the things you say is that 85% of your revenue come from just 2 digital courses.
Yes.
I'm curious, what have you learned about the power of focus and creating flagship and signature products? And I even personally have been there, and I wonder, you know, many listening to this, if they've been doing this for a while, they might have 46 different products on their website. They've got this funnel, that funnel, to this thing, to that thing, and that website's broken because how could you possibly manage it all? Or all these different trickles. How did you get that focus? Do you think that's important? And yeah, what arrived you at just really focusing on the 2? And do you think that sometimes entrepreneurs fall into that issue of being too diluted?
I love this question. I believe my secret to success is that I am known for something, and I'm known for how to create and launch digital courses. The reason I'm known for it is because I've gone all in for 15 years of doing this. Mm-hmm. Now, what the challenge is, why most people don't do it this way, is entrepreneurs love variety, right? We love to start things. We love big ideas. We love to get out there and let's try this, let's try that. And the challenge is then you're never known for anything. And when a topic comes up, your name's not at the top of the list. So what I do know, and this is not bragging, this is just years of experience. If someone's in a room and says, I want to create a digital course, do you know anyone who can help me? My name will be at the top of that list. But that didn't happen by accident. It's because I've stayed in my lane and done the same thing over and over again. Sometimes do I want to do something else, get a little bored? I don't know if I get bored, but I want to do something else. Yes, it becomes a hobby. You don't have to make money with everything you want to do in this life. And so my secret, yes, has been one thing, go all in. And for me, it's Digital Course Academy, one program I have. But here's the thing. Years ago, I used to do a whole lot more. And I was always overwhelmed, always confused about what I should be focusing on. You're right. Things broke down a lot. My team felt very overwhelmed and stretched too thin. And I didn't enjoy what I was doing. This is around 2011. So I know the difference. So that's when I said, okay, less is more. So I live by a motto that less is more. I found what worked. And it took me a while. It took me a few years to say, oh, this is what people are responding to the most. And then I had the discipline to go all in. Now, every year we make the course better, our marketing better, the course better. We tinker with it. We try new things. Like, let me give you an example. I've been doing this for 15 years, but just last year, we did all of our webinars in a big fancy studio. You know, those studios with all the Zoom people behind you. And we went to North Carolina or South Carolina to do it, one of the Carolinas. And it was a big deal, but I wanted to stretch myself and try something new. So I'm always reinventing myself, doing new things, but it always comes down to the same course I'm promoting. That I really do think takes discipline.
That's so powerful to think about the power of focus. I know for us too, because of the progression of things, we've gone deep in YouTube, but eventually we started dipping our toes into, people asked, how did you build your email list? So we created this program that ended up being pretty profitable, but just a fraction of what we were doing with our main YouTube course. And then it was so, being a small town kid, college dropout, this program was earning $25,000 a month reoccurring.
That's
revenue.
a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so thinking about this though, it was like, we should sunset this. We should actually shut this down. But I was terrified.
Yes.
But by doing that, we sunset that program and then had the best year ever as we went all in, getting back to our main program called Video Ranking Academy. And over the years, we had like micro products, which I guess there could be maybe like, you guess you'd call them lead, you could call them tripwires or low ticket or tiny offers. But we had like Crush collabs, Inner Circle, YouTube Hypergrowth Blueprint, And eventually it was about like 15 different things on our website.
Wow.
And then getting it down to like, we have one program and now we have like 3 levels on the one program, but we have learned this the hard way as well and the painful way. And so I love that insight. Talk a little bit about flagship signature products and the difference between that. And are you a proponent of like a tiny offer, breaking off a piece that could lead to your course? Do you ever have holiday sales on lower ticket things or?
Yeah. So I am a fan of experimenting with things like that, as long as you keep your eye on the prize and know what your moneymaker is. But we have a program that's $500. It's List Builder Society. It's on Evergreen. So that's another thing. We have one program on Evergreen, meaning we sell it every day. And then we do one big launch for Digital Course Academy in the fall every year. And there's pros and cons with that. I actually want to point something out. Having a majority of my revenue come in late September is very risky. It's something we've looked at, probably will change over time. So I love that we're having this conversation, because not everything in my business is perfect, of course, right? I might have had a $20 million year, but I could tell you 10 things that I'd really like to change. So it's important when you're looking at other people's businesses to know like nothing's perfect, nothing's great, and we all want to make it better. But getting back to the point, so I've got this course that is on Evergreen, and then I've got this live launch. But with that, I love to experiment with smaller offers or we did, for the first time a few years ago, we did a Black Friday deal with List Builder Society. And we didn't discount it, but we added a program that I had expired, but it was a great program. Same thing. I knew I had too much, so I took it off. But then I thought we could bring it back for a special promotion. So I love mixing things up and trying things like that. I love a tripwire. But where is your main focus going to be? Where is your core competency? That's what's most important. And here's one thing to think about mindset-wise. Why are you doing it? If you're bored, you want variety, you want to try something new, that's not why we should be creating new things. It's how can I enhance the core thing I'm doing in my business?
That's brilliant. Now, eventually people want to sell their online course, but one of the things you teach people with is how to create like an irresistible offer.
Yes.
And if you're listening to this, a really good question, you're like, okay, but am I going to sell my online course or am I making an offer? What's the difference between an online course and an offer?
No one's ever asked me this question. It's one of my favorite topics. In my course, it's module 4 is my favorite module to talk about this. So I love that you said that. So you've got a digital course. That is a product that you sell. But an irresistible offer is everything around that. So let me give you an example. So you've got your course, we call it your core program, but also you have bonuses. Bonuses are part of an offer. You've got a show up live on my webinar bonus. You've got a fast action bonus for 48 hours in the middle of a launch when things get a little tired. You've got a cart close bonus for everyone on the fence. Whatever you want to do, bonuses are part of your offer. Your refund policy is part of your offer. Mm-hmm. Are you going to do 2 weeks? 60 days, whatever it might be, but getting clear on what your refund policy is, and you communicate it very clearly when you're promoting, part of your offer. Your price point. So back in the past, I don't do this anymore, but I used to do this. I had a VIP level and an independent study. That was part of my offer. You can get in on 2 different levels. Your payment plan. That's part of your offer. Are you going to allow people to do a 12-month payment plan? You're going to get more money if you do, but it's going to come in slower. Part of your offer. And then any kind of community you offer, that's part of your offer too. Do they get 10 weeks with you in a private Facebook group? Part of your offer. So your irresistible offer is all of that. And you have to be really mindful of each piece of that and then build it into your marketing. That's how you create an offer where you stand out versus somebody else. They're selling a course. You're creating an irresistible offer.
Man, what a great breakdown. And I want to ask you, one of the things I love, I was, on your website and I followed you for probably a decade and seen you at different events, and your brand seems to be very intentional. Mm-hmm. And has, from my perception, you've got a very high trust, high authority, strong brand, visuals, the language you use, the copy. How have you thought about that? Getting to ask you, how do you think about branding and legacy?
I will say that it kind of came together over the years. And one thing I have to my benefit is 15 years behind this business, where a lot of people, especially my audience, brand is very overwhelming to them, but they're in their first or second year of business. So it's not going to make sense. It's trial and error and experimenting. Does this feel good? Does that feel good? And really, what I love about entrepreneurship is it's so much personal development, right? Learning who you are and what you stand for. So one thing about my brand that I've gotten criticism for is you're too polished, Amy. You're too kind of put together. You should come on with no makeup and a messy bun and in your sweats. I'm not that girl. Yeah. And so of course I've tried it and I was like, okay, I need to be more casual. I'm like, this is not who I am. So because I've gotten older, it comes with age as well. I'm like, this is me. This is me on a daily basis. So take it or leave it. So learning who you are and what you stand for and doubling down on that builds a beautiful brand and a legacy. I'll look back and I know if I look at my business and my brand, that is who I am. There's no faking it anymore. There's not an Amy Porterfield. Well, I was going to say there's not an Amy Porterfield at home and at business. A little bit. We all are a little bit more laxed and, I'm a little bit sillier maybe in my personal life, but this is who I am in my brand. And once I owned it, it all started coming together. So it's all about personal development that I think really creates a beautiful brand, knowing who you are.
So that's really encouraging because if I'm hearing you right, would you say if you're just starting, you probably should not overthink it?
No.
And it's very overrated.
Thank you. And I'm going to remember that you said that because that's exactly how I feel. It's overrated. Don't overthink it. I'd rather you think about how do I give immense value? How do I build my email list with great lead magnets that people can't get enough of? I think the brand, when we overthink it in the beginning, we're thinking about our image too much. Mm-hmm. The brand comes together when the value's there.
Okay. And then to you, what would you consider though the elements of your brand today? I guess, do you at this stage though think about colors, collaborations? What are the elements in your perspective? the audio production value of your podcast? How to, maybe at a more advanced level, what you just transfer these details to your team of, and sometimes you could call this company culture, but that's not what we do here, or that's how we do it here. What are some of those brand values for you?
Yes, that I do. And I think the longer you've been in business and the bigger you get, I think it becomes more important, such as I've got a podcast and the audio quality is a big deal to me. Like I would never put out something that wasn't really crisp and really good or nicely edited. That stuff matters to me.
Was it super polished at the start?
No, absolutely not. And I literally read word for word a script in the beginning. Like I cringe when I see the first episodes because I wanted to write everything out because I was too nervous. So and my audio wasn't great. I've got this beautiful studio now in my home. I didn't have any of that before. So I think this happens over time. But when I think about my brand, I think about brand personality. What's the personality of my brand? Compassion is number one. We have company values. You have no idea what somebody's going through. Everyone's doing the very best they can. We subscribe to that. So through my writing, through my social media, through my personality, I want people, when they think of my brand, that is a compassionate brand that cares deeply about us. So those different things matter to me, how we treat our audience, how we approach them. And also, I do like it to be professional. I like it to be put together because that's who I am. So I'm going to care that our website looks nice. Now, I don't have a spectacular website, but there's cohesiveness. There's the brand colors, there's font. I do care about things like that. I just am careful to talk about it because I don't want my beginner students to care about it too much.
So strong. Last question on courses. What comes first, email or your course? Building your list.
Great question. So I tell my students, you can create a course while you grow your email list, but we want at least 500 people on our email list before we launch the course. So you can be doing both, but the minute you want to launch, we got to get at least 500 people on our list.
Do you recommend, when people feel very overwhelmed and this is a side hustle, they think, okay, they're following the Think Media podcast. I'm trying to be consistent on YouTube. Oh, now I need to create a lead magnet.
Yeah.
Now I'm building my email list. When am I going to have time to create the course? Do you recommend people slowing down and taking a break, or trying to chop up their time and do each of these things to slowly make progress? And maybe it's not a one size fits all, but in light of that, okay, I'm creating content. And I'm not even full-time as a solopreneur with a VA or even did my first launch. I'm still in those early stages and I'm trying to go through DCA and make my videos and record my podcast and get my modules out there. And it's all of the things. If there's a little bit of sequencing, what would your thought be?
You know my audience well. Like that's exactly what they're thinking. I'm trying to do all of this. And I would say, first of all, a lot of my students, they need to make money fairly quickly, meaning it might be a side hustle, but all they want to do is leave that 9-to-5 job, or they've left the 9-to-5 job. So they don't have a choice. They have to make money. So I always say, let's choose one way, one offer you're going to make money. For me, if you're in my world, it's going to be a course. So if it's going to be a course, we need to think about the things that are going to get that course launched, which is your email list and your weekly original content, because I think that feeds into growing an email list. So if you told me, Amy, you have to choose one, it is creating an email list. And notice I did not say it's growing your social media. I have a lot of opinions about that. I think social media is fickle. I think you're building your business on rented land when you go all in with social. I think social is a great way to grow an email list, and that's how we should look at it. And there's other ways to, the engagement and the impact you can make. But at the end of the day, if you said, Amy, choose between 1 million followers on Instagram or an email list of, let's say, 5,000, I am choosing that email list every single day. So you do want to focus on growing that email list.
So let's just briefly talk about email marketing. And you already made some bold statements there. Do you think that email marketing is underrated or overrated for most entrepreneurs?
Absolutely underrated. You would be amazed about how many marketers will say, growing an email list takes time. I don't want to focus on it. I have one woman, she has over 1 million followers on TikTok. And I got to talk to her and kind of help her put together a course. And she said, I don't want to grow an email list. People are annoyed to get emails. I don't want to be that annoyance. I'm just using social media. And I think, okay, one day if TikTok goes away, you are screwed. Like what the heck? But I couldn't convince her. So I just let her do her thing. But I definitely believe that you've got to focus on this, but it has to be intentional. So the reason why I say underrated is because this does take time, but I think everything in life that's worth it is going to take some time. And the beautiful thing about growing an email list is once you set your foundation, it starts to happen more organically. It becomes so much easier. It's that foundational part that might take a moment.
So you would really rather have 5,000 email subscribers than 1 million TikTok followers?
Absolutely. Do you know, well, you don't know, I'm going to tell you how many people that will come into my world that have millions of TikTok followers. I don't. I have 10,000. I do not post on TikTok anymore. So I have 10,000 followers, and I have about almost 500,000 on Instagram. So that's good. People could smash me with their numbers on social media, and I know I make a whole lot more money than them. And I know it's my email list. So I will die on this one.
Okay. How about playing this scenario though? How about Instagram? Would you rather have 500,000 followers on Instagram, which you do, or 5,000 people on an email list?
Absolutely 5,000 people on an email list. But this is a trick question, and I created it, I know. But here's the deal. If you said, okay, Amy, actually, no, I'm not going to give you the 5,000 people on an email list. I'm giving you the 500,000 on Instagram. I would literally focus on moving them to an email list. Yes.
And because I'm thinking, especially one of the biggest modern trends that's working would be ManyChat or having someone comment. And if you haven't engaged 500,000 on Instagram.
And if you're willing to use that to grow an email list, yes. My point is people will have 500,000 people on Instagram and not focus on growing an email list. So that's why it's a trick question. Give me the 500,000 people on Instagram and I'll show you how I can grow my list to 100,000, because not all of them are going to move over. But if you're not intentional, a bunch of people on social media, it's not where it's at. It does not do what an email list will do.
Yes. Donald Miller today on a podcast said he thinks one email subscriber is worth about $34. That might have been his math.
No, I think I heard it through, I think OptiMonster had said something like that. And I'm living proof. Absolutely.
So that's such a mindset shift. If you're speaking to those who have still objections, but like, do people still use their email? Like, does email really work? Break that down. I mean,
so what I always say is, think about the last time you opened an email. I'm pretty sure every day we open emails. Yeah. We don't open all of them. We send some to spam. We get rid of some. But the ones that speak to us, we're never going to miss it, whether it's a store, an influencer, a marketer, whatever it might be. And so we all have those emails. Be that person to your subscribers. And the way you do that is, one, you are consistent. You are showing up regularly in their inbox. You care deeply about your subject lines. This is a big one. So I'm a big fan of subjectline.com. It's a free resource. I tell all my students about it, but they literally help you come up with a better subject line that's going to work. And the reason I say this resource all the time is that's the first thing they're going to see. And so many of us don't give the time there. So you pay attention to your subject lines. You show up often in their inbox and you give value every single time. You are going to be that person. So yes, email works incredibly well when you are intentional about how you're doing it.
If you're creating content on YouTube or you have a video podcast, what is the next step to start building your email list?
Yeah. So I have a podcast, and you are the master at YouTube. And so with both, I believe that you should never end a podcast or never have a podcast or a YouTube channel or show that you don't have a call to action for a freebie on there. I might embed it in the middle of a podcast. I might mention in the intro, but there's always some way for you to get on my email list through my podcast episodes. So I love finding an organic way to do it that's built in. So let me give you an example. So I might be talking about creating digital courses, and then I'll say there's so many myths with digital courses. One might be XYZ. Actually, I've got a freebie. I'm going to outline the 5. If you want to go grab it, here's the URL. Then I just keep moving on. So it's not this big dance that I do about it, but I find organic ways. So I believe there should always be a call to action on a YouTube video or a podcast for a lead magnet.
Strong. And what are some of the most effective lead magnets?
So the very one that's working right now that I think is the very, very best, actually, you guess. So like all the different kind of formats, what do you think is the one that's like killing it? It's
one pager.
It's a quiz.
A quiz.
Now, this is a little bit more advanced. So for those of you who have never created a lead magnet, we're creating a PDF, a one pager, a checklist, a cheat sheet. That's what I teach. We're starting there. But once you get that going, the next thing is a quiz. And the reason why quizzes are such great list builders is people love to talk about themselves and learn about themselves. And so for the ladies, you'll know this. When we were young, in the magazines we used to read, there used to be all the kind of quizzes like, what does your favorite Halloween candy say about your love life? And we're like typing in or answering all the questions we want to know. So the reason why is because we're curious about ourselves. That's very human nature, normal thing. That's why I love quizzes. Now, what I've learned over the last year and something we've been experimenting with is when you create a quiz, think about a quiz that can cast a wide net. That's very fun, curiosity engaging. I have a gal that I interviewed for my podcast, and I'm going to get this wrong, but her name's Harley Jordan, so I want to give her credit. But her quiz was, are you a fox, a cat? I forget the two other animals. There's 4 animals. I had to know what animal I was. I don't know why I had to know, but once she told you, answered some questions, and then she told you more about yourself and what to do with it. So quizzes, when you can create curiosity, when they can be a little bit more mainstream, when you can tell people a little bit more about themselves and it's kind of fun and engaging, works like gangbusters. And here's another thing. When you run ads to a quiz, way cheaper than a lot of different things that you run ads to. You'd be amazed. So cheap ads and really great for curiosity and people wanting to get on, find out more about themselves.
Man, that's so great. And you have some resources. I have one final question for you, but I want to make sure that people can check out some of your resources. You do have a free email marketing training.
Yes.
So we'll link that up in the show notes. You are also the author of your 2-week notice.
Yep.
And New York Times bestselling book.
Yes.
What is that book about if people want to check it out and go deeper in that?
So 2 weeks notice is all about how to find or put together a plan to quit your job, make more money, work where you want, and change the world. And it's basically what my journey was, and so many of my students is, I'm in a 9-to-5 job that I don't want to be in anymore, but I have no idea what I would do. So the book's not about creating courses. It's about putting together a plan of how you're going to leave that job and start a business of your dreams. Everything you need to know from start to finish. And it was basically my journey and what I teach other people how to do as well.
Amazing. So we'll have that in the show notes as well. And before that final question, is there anything else right now that you want to give a shout out to or invite people to or resources you have?
I so appreciate you asking. I think my podcast, Online Marketing Made Easy, we talk about courses and list building and entrepreneurship and mindset and all the fun things, challenges, boot camps, all the stuff we talked about. So it's a great resource if you're just getting started.
Amazing. So we'll link that up as well. My final question is, what is your why? What is the mission behind all of this and the impact you want to make, especially after you've been so successful? What keeps you going? And break that down.
15 years ago when I started, my why was I wanted more freedom for myself. I didn't want to be told what to do, when to do it, or how to do it. I wanted to create a life on my terms. It was very selfish, and that's okay. It was the only way I was getting out of 9-to-5 if my why was I want something better for my life. 15 years later, and the impact I've been able to make for my family, myself, and my students, I wake up every morning in hopes of creating freedom for other people. And especially women that are in a job where they're not appreciated, they're not making enough money, they're invisible. I want to teach them that there's a totally different opportunity. I'm the breadwinner of my family, which is a different gender role than we usually see. I grew up with my dad was a firefighter, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. The man made the money. In my family, my husband is retired firefighter, and I am the breadwinner. And I want to show more women this is a different life that you can absolutely have and make an amazing impact. So I first wanted freedom for me. Now I want freedom for so many people out there that want it as well.
So I hope you've been getting massive value out of my conversation with Amy Porterfield. It's a true privilege to be able to sit down with her. She's truly a legend in the online business space. And I took away so many nuggets and insights from this conversation. Now, of course, if you watch the podcast on YouTube, I would love to hear your biggest aha moments or takeaways. And if you are listening on audio and you haven't taken the time to maybe rate on Spotify or leave a review on Apple Podcasts, it truly helps the message of the Think Media podcast spread, because there's so much opportunity right now when it comes to YouTube, and there's massive opportunity when it comes to online courses. Now, there's also been some big changes. The industry is definitely changing. And that's why I love to bring you experts that I learn from and the people that I study and try to get the latest insights from. And Amy Porterfield is definitely one of those people, as she has always got the best tips when it comes to digital course creation. So as a reminder, if you want to go a little bit deeper on this topic, she is teaching a free live masterclass. There's a few different dates I believe it's happening. And if you happen to be watching the replay of this, it may just be a wait list, or it just might be gone forever. So if you're interested in that, then go to digitalcourseclass.com or click the link in the show notes of this episode so that you can get into one of those live trainings that Amy is doing. I want to say I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being a part of the Think Media podcast community. I can't wait to connect in a future episode. In the meantime, my name is Sean Cannell, your guide to building a profitable YouTube channel, and we will talk soon.